I'm Lindsay Pedersen. I'm a brand strategist, and today we're going to talk about why it is crazy to delegate brand to marketing. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing that changes everything. Let me ask you, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? Well, today I want to ask you, is brand some sort of amorphous thing? Or is there a specific strategy to take it out of the elusive and forge it into something that is actually ironclad? Well, tune into this episode to find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes in our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart Radio, or wherever it is that you tune into podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please go over there, rate, review, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And remember, you can catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday. Also look for us on ROKU TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you are a new listener, new viewer, thank you. And if you're a regular, we have a big thank you to you because you have made us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners with a potential reach of 2.5 million listeners for every single show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know that there's a lot of talk about brand, and you might even be a bit sick of it. Is there something specific that we can do to take it out of the elusive and forge it into something that is ironclad? If you're tired of the fluffy talk about brand and you actually want to know what the step-by-step process is to what it actually means, that it's more than a logo or it's more than a catchphrase, what does it really mean? Well, stay tuned because our guest on this episode is Lindsay Pedersen. She is a brand strategist and leadership coach who views brand as a blend of science, intuition, and behavioral economics and ancient storytelling. She's worked with companies like Starbucks, Clorox, T-Mobile, IMDb, and burgeoning startups. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome Lindsay Pedersen! Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Dov.
You're welcome. It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
We're going to talk about some things today that I know we're going to talk about them in a different way because, as I said, I think that people get a bit tired of this whole brand talk. Every man and his dog is now a brand expert. And I want to really get into the meat of this in a moment. But first, I want to jump into this question, which is in this world of influencers and well-publicized individuals, I'm always interested to find out from leaders, who's somebody who's had massive influence on you? Who's somebody who has had a great level of impact on you? Maybe transformed the way that your philosophy of life or leadership, and it might be somebody we don't know or somebody we might not suspect. Who would that be?
Yes. The first person who comes to mind is a marketing professor that I had during business school. So this was 20 years ago. And Rashi Glazer was his name. And he introduced us, all of my classmates and me, to this notion that marketing is not a kind of whiz-bang set of kind of hocus-pocus tools. It's actually at the crux of commerce itself. It's the very essence of business. And it's a blend of empathy, like getting inside the head of the person that you're serving, and also kind of infusing that with economic principles. So that was so enlivening to me, because it did feel like this blend. It didn't feel purely soulless economics, but it also wasn't this squishy, nebulous, advertising and promotion and smoke and mirrors either. It was actually this combination that was so fueling for businesses.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about marketing, we often think about the Mad Men model. We were all sold on the idea of somebody who came up with a great idea, but it certainly doesn't seem to have any particular science to it. And your book, is a little different in that. So let's start there with, from your point of view, because I can ask this question 1,000 times and I'm going to get a different point of view. But from your point of view and what you do, because I said you've worked with some really big organizations, big brand names. What is brand?
Yeah.
Seems like a silly question. It seems so great, so obvious, but I think it's an important question. What, from your point of view, what actually is brand?
Yes, and it's not a silly question. It's actually a massively important and consequential definition, because if you're talking about brand as one of its many aspects, and the listener thinks that it's one of its other many aspects, then it's a really confusing conversation. So the way that I define brand is what you stand for. It's the thing that your company means inside the head of your audience. It's that position in their brain, that relationship between your business and the hearts and minds of your audience. So it's what you stand for. And everything that your business does that either reinforces or neutralizes that meaning is a branding activity. So it's all of the things that we're doing to reinforce and build that relationship with our target audience. So every business has a brand. It's only a question of whether you are deliberately defining it in an active way, or whether you're allowing the market to position you in a passive way.
All right, but I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around it in the context of, at the simple level, right? We just start at the simple level first, but the simple level that brand is a logo, or it's a catchphrase, but it's more than that, right? So let's just hit those two first, because I think a lot of people, particularly people who are outside of marketing, think of brand as being one of those two things. It's the catchphrase or it's the logo, but it is more, right?
Yes, well, it can be. It's a tool. So the way that I think about this, the kind of the visual signals of brand, like the company name and the logo and the color palette, and maybe there's a tagline or imagery that you use. Those are all the visual manifestations of your brand. But again, if you think of brand as this relationship, the thing that your business means inside the head of your audience, a relationship between, human to human relationship, or it kind of mimics those dynamics. A human being, has a lot of layers, and what we wear and what we choose to wear as our outfit might be like the logo of the company, but to mistake me for the clothes that I choose to wear is kind of like mistaking brand for the logo. Yes, it's part of me. I mean, hopefully it kind of expresses something that is important to me, or like something inside me comes through in the way that I dress, but it's a little strange to equate that with who I am. Same goes for logo. So if you're a business that does kind of relegate brand to the world of graphic design, like logos, you're just not using its power. You're just kind of using this superficial element of it that's not unimportant. Visual cues are super useful to human beings. So it's not that it's unimportant. It's just that it's the beginning of the story, not the end of the story.
So it's a Ferrari without an engine.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a beautiful
And it
way
might
of
even be a
putting it.
cardboard Ferrari without an engine.
Yes. Yes. So again, it's what you mean to your audience. So if you think of like a loyal Ferrari driver, I'll just kind of pretend that I'm that for a second. That person, the way that they have this relationship with Ferrari has everything to do with it, how it makes them feel to see the Ferrari in their garage, to drive the Ferrari, to show it to their friends, the hum of the engine, the experiential and visceral cues of it, and yes, also the way that it looks and the logo. That's all of those, because we're humans, we operate and we make decisions and we have relationships in a multi-layered way. So it's exactly like that. You're not going to have a brand that's going to create loyalty and love among your target customers if you're a Ferrari with no engine.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that I liked about, you know, when we talked before about your approach is that one of the things that you are very clear about is, you know, because of your background in psychology, that you understand brand as relationship. And, you know, when I talk to people about, you know, as you know, both of us have this background in psychology, when I talk to people about relationship and I said, well, what is relationship? And we can, you know, we can spend a couple of months discussing that, right?
Yeah.
Ongoingly without taking a pee break. But the truth of the matter is, any relationship will eventually get defined in how you feel being with that person. That's it, right? You can talk about needs, you can talk about values, you can talk about, but the bottom line is, how do I feel being with this person? And that is the element, that's the bare knuckles version of the relationship is, how do I feel? I feel like I want to strangle you more often than I want to love you, or I want to love you more often than I want to strangle you, or you make me feel elated, or, you know, whatever it is. And this is what I really found interesting about our conversation, because I'm not doing a lot of brand conversations anymore, because I'm kind of like, okay, I'm not hearing anything new. And what, you know, you and I talked about that. And one of the things that I liked about this was that you was talking about it as it is this brand is this intermediary that facilitates a relationship between two beings, one being the company and the other being the consumer. Yes. And how they make us feel. Walk us a little deeper into that, would you please, Lindsay? Because I just really am intrigued.
Yes. Yes. So a lot of times I think of this as the North Star. So your brand is your North Star. And when you're leading a business and you have a North Star, just like when you have a map, instead of just vague directions, you're more able to be true to a single idea. And so the North Star, when you make your brand your North Star, you make decisions as a leader, you make decisions according to that North Star in order to optimize that North Star. And it creates that focus that allows you to provide disproportionate value and goodness, emotional and rational, to your target audience, to your customer. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like this internal, especially when you're the leader and you're trying to prioritize and you're trying to allocate resources, when brand is your North Star, you're focusing your time and emotional energy and money on the single thing where you alone bring the most value to your customer. Then on the customer side, when the customer is, you know, in a world where our attention is so scarce, where we are just bombarded with stimuli, a clear and singular brand makes it easier for us to see and make decisions. And when because we humans are so, you know, a hyper-social species, we're drawn to the relationship that we can build with, whether it's a person with whom we share values or a company with whom we share values. That's something that is meaningful to our limbic system. It livens us up as people. And when you can do that, you're providing value. Not only when you as a business can do that, you're providing value for that person so that they will choose you, which in turn creates value for you as a business. so that your business thrives because your customer is thriving because of your business.
Right. And one of, you talked about the North Star there. And I think that this is, was one of the things that I saw as a crossover between you and I was this, that maybe what you call brand, others might call a why.
Yes.
Right. So,
yes.
Because, I think that oftentimes, what other people call a why, I don't call a why, but what they call a why is nothing more than a mission statement. And some people call a logo a brand, but it's not a brand. And, you and I are talking about this, true north that we're pulled towards. Talk to us about the relationship between a purpose and a brand in the context of where you're at.
Yes, I think that there's deep overlap, or that in the best of scenarios, there's deep overlap between purpose and brand. Right? Like what I find, at least among the leaders that I work with, is there's a lot of cynicism about mission and vision and values and even stated purpose. They get kind of like, and but it's not that they don't care about it. They just are, the words themselves are sort of take them away from the meaning instead of toward the meaning. So when I introduce them to the idea of brand, especially a brand that has kind of a this step-by-step method instead of just whiz-bang creative, it allows them to get to your brand promise. That's the crux of your brand. This is the one thing that our customer cares about, that we're the only ones in the world who can bring to them. That's our brand promise. Done well, that actually is your purpose too. It's just that I came in through a different doorway that could be a little bit more methodical to an audience, my clients, that like methodical. So that I think that I think that we're, in some ways, we're using several different words to describe, like you said, your why. What's the meaning that you want to endure beyond the life of your company? What is that one thing? And you can talk about it, if you prefer to talk about it as mission, great. Talk about it as mission. If you prefer to talk about it as purpose, that's great too. And that, so it's really like this, we quickly get into a semantic conversation about like, what are all of these words? And it does matter, the words do matter, but not as much as what you're leading people to. They're really breadcrumbs to the core idea. Right.
And this is why you believe that brand is far too important to be limited to marketing, right? Because I think that a lot of people think about brand and it automatically goes in marketing, but you believe it's much bigger than that.
Yes, for two reasons. Number one is that the customer experiences more than marketing. The customer experiences the product. The Ferrari driver experiences the engine and the, technology interface and the dashboard. They experience the dealership. They experience what it's like to get their Ferrari serviced. All of these are things that happen outside of marketing. So if you delegate brand to marketing, you're missing on all of the touch points that create that relationship to begin with. It's like applying a veneer over the surface of something to make it shiny, but you're not actually creating something of integrity underneath the surface. So that's the first reason that it can't be delegated to marketing. The second is that, again, this idea of, I say position or be positioned. If you don't take an active role in defining what you want your brand to be, you will still wind up with a brand. It just won't be the one of your choosing. And if you're allowing the forces of the market to kind of land you in any old place, it's not going to be a favorable one. So when you actively articulate what you want your brand to mean, you can choose the thing that you want it to be so that you can create the most value. If you're trying to grow, it can be an idea that can grow. If you're trying to be a cash cow, it can help you to be a cash cow. If you're trying to remain a mom and pop shop, it can help you to do that. But when you take this deliberate stance with it, you improve the likelihood that you're going to reach those goals.
So I want to just play against the other side for a moment. Is that okay?
Please, love it.
Because there are, I know, because I've interviewed many of these people who say, well, I didn't really plan to be this or that. I kind of fell into it. It kind of came along, but it is exactly perfectly right for me. Because oftentimes I meet people who are multifaceted and don't like the rigidity of or the limitation of what you're talking about. Right. And they very much are bigger than that. And that's the term I'll use, but they're bigger than that. They don't like that restriction. And then they kind of maybe fumble and stumble but find themselves into something that is just delicious for them, that is bigger than the singular focus. So help us out with that, because it seems that seems to be the opposite.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. And actually, this is a really maybe universal theme, maybe it's like source of anxiety among leaders that I work with, which is, hey, you're asking me to focus and I don't want to focus because then I'm taking things off the table. I would rather hedge, because then I don't have to, commit to something that I may regret later. So that idea is really, really common. I think that what you're describing, like the idea of kind of serendipity and allowing the market to evolve and for you to evolve with the market, can absolutely fit within the construct of brand as I'm talking about it. So for example, Uber, which the origins of Uber were to be a private town car service. Yes. And now it's trying to be the transportation infrastructure, both inside and outside of governments. So that evolved, and that was only over 11, 12 years. So the soul, kind of like there's something that didn't change, even though some of the market certainly changed and some of those outward cues changed. So there is something that's not changing. I contend there usually is something underneath that maybe isn't spoken, but it is going to be present in your company regardless of where the market takes it. The other thing I'll say is that in a lot of ways, brand, as I talk about it, which is kind of the source of focus is simply a tool for efficiency. So the problem with having, 5 ideas, 5 North Stars instead of 1 is it's just expensive. It's expensive. It costs you more to market more things. It doesn't, crystallize and galvanize employees to throw their weight behind one single idea. So if you're a company that has the resources to have multiple focuses, and actually I've worked with under companies like that, Clorox, the Clorox company would be a company like that. If you can afford to have multiple positions because you have such homogeneity in your customer market, awesome. Like there is nothing wrong with that, but you're still getting deliberate about what those multiple focuses are.
Yeah, I mean, because I think if you go back and you say to Jeff Bezos in the early days, all you can ever do for the rest of your life is sell books, I think he would have told you to go bugger off, right? And at the same time, I also think that I doubt that Bezos would have said to you, listen, my goal is to mine asteroids, which is actually what the Amazon company is aiming towards now, or to be in the data business and housing information for the CIA. which is what they do. People think Amazon's big business is selling products. It's not. It's actually a minor for them. But your contention here, as I understand it, is that there would have been something underneath before all of that that has not changed, which I would call purpose.
Right.
Which is just like, this is what has always been there. That's not moving, but the expression of it may have gone into data mining, may have gone into asteroid mining, may have gone into retail sales.
Yes, exactly. And I think if you look at any enduring business, Amazon's been around 22 years, 23 years now. Mm-hmm. But gosh, look at, Nike's been around since the late 60s. For the first 10 years of Nike's existence, they were just focusing on their 4-ounce sole. They were just focusing on lightweight. And they evolved to this bigger space around, it's about speed. No, they were always about speed, but they were focusing on kind of a feature, the sole. And then they started to be about speed. And then later when they introduced their tagline, "Just Do It" in 1989, they became kind of this the lifestyle brand, It's about victory. It's about kind of moxie and swagger. Those all are, in some ways, it's almost like a person who's going through personal development. They all are the same. They all have the same ethos. They just have a different emphasis.
Right. It's a really fascinating way of looking at brand. Obviously, as I said, you do look at it in a very different way. Now, you have in the book, your book, which is Forging an Ironclad Brand, you have a method for building a brand strategy that you walk through in the book. And I think you call it the ladder, and for clarifying and crystallizing what a brand really is. Can you sort of walk us through a bit of that so that we can get a grasp of it?
Yes. So I have an 8-step method in my book that I kind of take you through, from identifying the consumer insight and kind of cultivating empathy for your customer and understanding the customer need, to identifying what's differentiating about your business. And then I go to this point, I call it the ladder. So it's the ladder step of my method. And so if you picture a ladder, and this is similar for people who know Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a similar idea to this, where at the bottom of your brand's ladder, you provide a functional, rational benefit to your audience. And so in the case of Nike, it was lightweight shoes. That was that very functional benefit. But that functional benefit upholds a bigger idea, a bigger promise. So in Nike's case, that promise is speed. You'll run fast. Our promise to you is you will run fast. Why? Because our soles weigh only 4 ounces. Right. So you didn't just make a big promise about allowing somebody to win the race. You backed it up with some teeth. You gave it some specific credibility, so that your audience doesn't just kind of think, oh, that's kind of a fluffy thing to say to me. They actually believe it. But then the idea of fast running, that's a bigger promise than lightweight shoes, but even fast running upholds something bigger. So in Nike's case, it's winning, it's victory, which is what Nike means. So our shoes are fast. Why? Because the soles weigh 4 ounces, so that you can win the race. So that's that end reward. And I think sometimes it's to harken back to your question about purpose. The way that I think about purpose, and that most of my clients come to think about purpose, is it's that top of the ladder idea. It's our purpose is that athletes can win. But you also have to, in a way, like brand being a structure, it's almost like a logical argument for why your customer should have a relationship with you. It does have that emotional payoff, but it also is grounded in something hardy. It has the fastest shoes. There's a huge investment put into lightweight soles. So it's not just we're the brand that's going to bring you victory. It also is anchored in things. And I think that sometimes, purpose is this bigger idea that the brand really is in service of all of your promises in service of that purpose. But a lot of times your audience isn't ready to hear your purpose. Your purpose is not necessarily a message that you can bring your audience. You need to earn your way up to using that as a motivation to purchase you. So having this ladder allows you to have, and that works dynamically. The different rungs of the ladder work dynamically with one another, allows you to have this big, large emotive benefit, this purpose idea, but it also provides guidance to your teams internally for what they should be prioritizing. Should we be prioritizing how handsome the shoe is? Well, does that help people win? No, then we shouldn't focus on that. Should we be focusing on the aerodynamics of the shoelaces? Well, does that help somebody run faster? Yes. Well, we should indeed innovate on the laces then. So it serves this very practical purpose for allocating our attention internally, which then allows us to provide an ever more true promise of faster shoes, because we're always innovating against that.
Do you think that most people even begin to understand that until they sit down with you, until they read your book, or until they work with you? Do you think that they understand that it is that ladder? Do you think that they understand?
I mean, I think that the idea of a hierarchy is not foreign to people. I think that feels kind of true as soon as you hear about it. I think the trouble with this, especially when you're so close to it, if you're the CEO, when you're a leader, it's like seeing the inside of your own eyelids. I totally understand the purpose of victory. I'm pretending I'm Phil Knight in the 1960s. I understand that. I just assume that everybody else is on the same page as I am, but they might not even know what Nike is. So I think that in some ways the ladder is a way to kind of bring yourself back to the beginning of your journey with getting to know this brand. Like, give them something tangible so that it's easier for them to organize it in their head. If you're the fast shoe, that is a lot easier for your audience to grasp than just we stand for victory. So it's kind of it's almost like going back in time to allow yourself to be empathetic to new customers, to people who are early in the journey with your business. A corollary of that is a lot of times leaders are the builders of their product themselves. Like they created the product and they're so proud of it. They, with their bare hands, they created this technology or this tangible product or this service, and they're so proud of it that they want to talk about the evocative element at the top of that ladder, or they want to talk about the feature that is so specific and distinctive to them that they're so psyched about, that the long battery life on the phone that they just built, right? So the other thing about the ladder that is useful for leaders is to keep themselves honest to what their customer actually cares about. The customer doesn't care about long battery life. They care about not having to remember to recharge their phone every 6 hours. So it's kind of a way to step out of yourself and be kind of outside in for the sake of delivering the most to your customer.
And that, of course, is the most difficult thing of all, is for the fish to describe water. As you said, to see your inside of your own eyelids is extraordinarily difficult. In the work we do around purpose, we talk about having two purposes, an internal and an external purpose. You only have one true purpose, but you have to have one that the world can understand. And the other one is internal, because it might be just for you, as in the owner, the creator, whatever, or it might be for your internal team. My personal internal purpose is vastly different than my external purpose in the way that it looks to the world. What it means to me is exactly the same, But if I say my internal purpose to the world, it's confusing because it's ethereal.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's what you're saying here, right? Is like,
yes.
by coming down on the ladder, you take it out of the ethereal and say, okay, here's what it means to you, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Green, whatever it is, right?
Yes.
And even though we can hold to this higher philosophy around it.
Yes, and there's a very pragmatic reason that what you just described is important, and that's that ethereal is hard for people to understand. It's cognitively expensive for your audience. If it's ethereal, they have to think about it for a few nanoseconds longer than if it's concrete. So it's actually an act of empathy to bring it down a notch to a way that's easier for your audience to perceive it. Because if they perceive it, if it's easier to perceive, they're more likely to perceive it and pay attention to it and get to know it better. So it's for the pragmatic purpose of being more successful in bringing people in. Not everybody is at that same ethereal level as you, and therefore they're going to have to expend more mental energy in order to let that in.
So. Lindsay, this is a fascinating conversation. How do we, let's imagine right now, let's take a company that's just in the lower end. Let's say they're $1 million to $5 million, right? Mm-hmm. They've got a brand because they wouldn't have gotten to that level already, but they're listening to this and going, yeah, well, obviously maybe I need to really relook at my brand. Where do I begin? Like, right. So we are already established. We're already out in the marketplace. We already are on social media. We've already paid for some ads. We already have a healthy, good business going on. But we're not going to that next level unless we really re-examine this. And they're saying, I guess. Now, they're not fully committed yet, right? But they're going, I guess we need to look at this. Where do we begin?
Yes. And I think what you just described is the vast majority of companies. So we have a name, we might have a tagline, we have a logo, we have a visual presence, but we haven't really sharpened our pencil to just define what's underneath those clothes. Exactly. At least in an overt exercise, there might be an implicit, maybe the innovation team has said, oh, we're trying to do this. But really what you're trying to do is make the implicit explicit. So the first step in that, in the process, and actually probably the thing that people gloss over the most is, I call this step orient. So orient yourself. Who even are your target customers? Who is this person? And I don't mean demographically who they are, because that's actually not who a person is. What are they like? What do they care about? What keeps them up at night? How do they relate to this problem that you're offering your product solves? Is it something they think about a lot? Is it something that they never think about? Really get inside that person's head and get specific about their attitudes and their behaviors toward either your company or toward your category, toward your type of product. When you that alone, if you do that alone, you're heads and shoulders above most companies, because it takes some humility to do this. You have to you have to eschew the notion that your product or service is for everybody. Now,
we've all been guilty of that one.
Yes, me included. And maybe it would be helpful also to say alongside that, target customer is different from total addressable market. So, that your total addressable market is this huge circle. You define that however you want. Anybody who has even the slightest bit of propensity to buy what you sell, that's your total addressable market. Your target customer is the bullseye that's in the very center of that circle. So when I say you got to define your target customer, I'm not saying you have to define your target customer is the only person that you're going to sell to. So if you sell, I don't know, you sell a new mom product to young middle-class women, and then you've got a dad who wants to buy that product, you're not going to say no just because he isn't your target customer. He's still in your total addressable market. So that if you can define that target customer and get curious about them, get on the phone with them, especially if you're B2B and you can do that. If you're B2C, get in front of your consumer. Where do your consumers buy what you sell? Get in that place so that you can just talk to them and hear from them and learn what it's really like to be them trying to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So I just went through the first two steps: orient, who are you targeting, and then listen, get inside their heads. What matters to them? What are the insights that you can leverage, or that you already do leverage? You just weren't conscious of it, with what you're building, with the product, with the offering that you're selling. And that's the foundation. Like, that is the first thing to do. You do those two things, and I would also advocate going through the rest of the process, doing the benefit ladder that we talked about earlier. But we have such a tendency to be insular, and to not be out there, and maybe because it is kind of an act of vulnerability to be asking these people that we're trying to serve, what do they really value? But when you do that, you open yourself up to the opportunity to bring them even more of that value, and to therefore create more value for your business.
But the problem is, as I see it, not the truth, but as I see it, the problem is an optimistic bias towards how I see it. So, this is a perfect fit for X. Okay. And I don't want to go out in the world and test that, because I'm so optimistic that this, and as you said, it's an act of vulnerability to go out there and, maybe we tested the wrong people. I mean, there's always this willingness to hold our own optimistic bias towards, we're on the right track, doing the right thing, this is good, versus how do you help get the somebody you might have to work with, or potentially could work with, how do you get them to step out of that a little bit? Because, as you said, they might be serving very well, but not even close to the level of which they could serve. Yes.
This is where oftentimes the economic argument for brand is really enlightening for people. So we don't create a brand. We as business owners don't create a brand because it's pretty and it feels warm and fuzzy. We create a brand because brand elevates our pricing power as a business. It fosters loyalty. It creates a competitive moat. It enables culture building around a singular idea and galvanizes employees to help you to do what you're trying to do. It builds morale. All of these things. But let's go to like that first one, because that's probably the most surprising to people, is that the economic purpose of brand is to elevate your pricing power. The more value you bring to customers, the more, if you wish to, you could increase your prices, thereby creating more margin, which then enables you to have this virtuous cycle of creating more value for your customers. So when you're, say you're that $1 to $5 million business and you have a successful offering, if you feel like it's successful, you've gotten traction, and then, you're thinking about doing market research and talking to customers, but it feels like, ooh, what if I hear something that I don't like to hear? Hold this lightly. You're not asking customers to tell you exactly what to do with your business. You're just trying to, the goal of this exercise is to cultivate empathy for your customers. And when you do that, you are simply more capable of serving them well. The way, so sometimes people think of market research as a risk management tool. Like, if we spend a little bit of time and money gathering data on this market, we're less likely to make a mistake. So absence of negative, like removing a risk. And those are true. I'm actually more interested in the presence of positive, which is you already have an idea that's successful, it's working, but what if you could make it significantly more successful just by understanding this one nuance? What if the things that you really don't like to do with your business, what if your customer doesn't care about those and you can forego them? Because now you understand the true insight that makes your company magnetic to those customers is about the thing that you actually wanted to double down on anyway. So these are, it's a source of power. It's a source of utility for you as a leader to create a more robust P&L for your business, more robust margins, and for customers, for you not to have to work as hard to get and keep customers.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up in this world. Because I don't think that was particularly purposeful.
No, it was not at all. It was not. Sure. Yeah, so in my college years, I was planning on becoming a clinical psychologist. So I was I went pretty deep with studying psychology, abnormal psychology and clinical psychology. And late in college, when it was kind of time to start applying to PhD programs, I realized that ivory tower world, I would be in academia for at least 7 years. And as a kind of pragmatic person, that ivory tower didn't appeal to me. So I floundered for a long time. I did management consulting because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I was in a management consulting program at what's called Deloitte Consulting. And in this program, after you've been in the program for a few years, you're expected to go to business school. If you're not welcome to stay in the program unless you go to business school. So I just I'm kind of floundering. I didn't really know what I like to do. I went to business school because I felt like I did have to, if I wanted to stay in that job. And this brings me back to the very beginning of our conversation, because I met this marketing professor, Rashi Glazer, who showed me that actually business, which I previously thought was kind of a dull, soulless world, was actually at its best when it's the most successful. It's because they've tapped into essential human behavior and human psychology. And so this blend of psychology and economics equals marketing. So that's how I got to this. I love getting inside the head of the consumer and understanding how we can be the most valuable business for this person. That was so exciting to me. So I went after business school to consumer packaged goods. I was at Clorox, the Clorox company. And Clorox and other consumer packaged goods companies like Clorox, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, Johnson & Johnson, General Mills. In that model, the brand management model, if you're a brand manager of a business like Casey Masterpiece barbecue sauce or Brita water filters, these are some businesses I worked on, you're the P&L owner, and most of the category, so again, like Casey Masterpiece barbecue sauce, most of that category is parity. Like, you're not all that different from other barbecue sauces. No. So the way that you source differentiation is through a really clear, vibrant brand. That's the only way to thrive in a parity world, is to have brand. It's very difficult to copy an emotional benefit, especially if it has a lot of personality and character. You can't copy that. You can copy features. You can add a little bit of vinegar to your barbecue sauce to make it really similar to ours, but you can't copy kind of that personality and that emotional reward that people experience only with our brand. All this to say, when you're in this environment, you get really good at brand building because you have to. It's like Darwinian. So,
adapt or die.
Adapt or die. Get really, really good at defining a positioning that's value creating, that only you can deliver on, so that you can continue to be a business. And I did that for a long time. And when I left that world to start to be a brand consultant, because I wanted to take these ideas outside of consumer packaged goods, that's when I started learning that outside of consumer goods, brand is a logo. And I found it, so, I mean, it took me a few years of bewildered interactions to understand just how deep the confusion, or how varied the understanding was of brand. So I heard, oh yeah, brand is our name, brand is a logo, brand is TV advertising like Mad Men, brand is that's our Google strategy, that's our Facebook strategy. And I was educating people on my point of view that actually brand is just your most trusty leadership tool. And yes, it affects all of those things, hopefully, but it's really there to create, it's a source of differentiation for you that allows you to create value in a way that nobody else can. And it can be this North Star, and it can help you elevate pricing power and loyalty and employee morale. And the more that people heard that outside of consumer goods, the more kind of surprised they were, as you were when we had this conversation. And it felt good to have these converts who were feeling almost relief, as a leader when you're pulled in so many different directions. Yes. But to have this like filter that allows you to create outsized value was such a relief. So that's how I got to do this. And it's why I wrote the book that I wrote, in the hopes that I could demystify this and make it empowering rather than overwhelming.
Yeah, it's always a fascinating question to ask, because nobody's journey is straightforward. That's what I was saying about understanding it, is that there is an evolution to it. So we're coming close to the end of the show, and I want to move into our lightning round, if that's okay with you, just for fun.
I'd love it.
Good. So, Lindsay, tell us, what makes you cry?
My kids crying.
Tears of sadness.
If I see my kids crying, I either cry or I want to cry.
How old are your kids now?
14 and 11.
Oh, wow. Okay, so not little. All right.
No, they're not little.
Right. What makes you want to cry laughing?
Oh, silly pet videos.
Really?
Like cats doing crazy, silly things, or dogs doing really endearing, human-like things.
What is the most endearing brand you know of?
Brand that I love is Everlane, which is a fashion brand that is super disciplined about being transparent about their supply chain and shining a light on the conditions in their work factories. So they're very earnest and very sincere and true and high integrity.
So is it that transparency piece around it? Is that what makes it endearing for you, or is it something else?
I think it's that it's so, as the consumer, I perceive it to be so true and sincere, because they never lapse. It's always, even when it's something that is not flattering to them, they're really overt about it. And so it creates this trust. I feel like I can trust them because they've been explicit even when it doesn't benefit them. It's kind of like a person, they'll be vulnerable, and so you feel drawn to them. Yeah,
you feel bond. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it was Domino's years ago who did the campaign around our pizza sucks.
Yeah,
I think it was Domino's who did that, and it was actually around just before it was actually very close to the global recession, and they just went, "Our pizza sucks. Tell us why," and they went out and said, and they asked people on camera, what is it about it? It sucks. And they were so completely transparent about it. And in a recession, fast food companies do well. People don't know that. It's because fast food is cheap. That's why people who are poor people, when they blame them for being overweight and saying, well, it's because they eat McDonald's, well, it's because that's what they can afford. It's cheap. And a lot of those pizza companies did very well during the recession, but that company did extraordinarily well because of that campaign. And it was a bottom end company that suddenly went through the roof because of that transparency. So for me, that is a very important part of brand, is the transparency piece, and particularly the transparency around here's the holes in us. Here's the flaws in who we are. Here's where we have let you, the customer, the whatever it is that, we've let you down. And yes. I'm always pulled to that. And I think it's part of the human condition. Well, you and I both know it is from a psychology point of view.
Yes.
We actually pull towards that. What's a guilty pleasure for you, Lindsay?
Soap operas.
Really?
Yes.
Any particular one?
The Young and the Restless. I've watched it for like 40 years.
Really? The Young and the Useless?
the Young and the Restless. Was that a Freudian slip? The Young and the Restless.
I said that. I said okay. The Young and the Useless. Or As the Stomach Turns is another one.
Exactly. You can watch it once every 3 or 4 months, and it moves so slowly that you haven't missed anything.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's really good. And final question. Before we finish, I'm actually going to ask you to, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to share with us, share with our audience where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources. But before I do, I want to ask you to share with us a single sort of practicality, something that our audience can go away, put into action, aside from buying your book, of course, but go away, put into action in the next, preferably 24 hours. They can go away and really have what you've been talking about land for them, make them, because I think if we get it, then we'll do something.
Yes. I would love for listeners and viewers to, after this conversation, after listening to this, write down in the first person vantage point, from your customer's vantage point, what is it, what do I, as the customer, pretend you're the customer, most care about when it comes to the type of offering that you solve? What do I really, what's inside of me that really is asking, what's the need, the unmet need that's really asking to be solved? And get really quiet while you do this, and just put yourself in that person's position and see if it sparks anything for you that wasn't present before.
And if it doesn't, I'm going to push you. If it doesn't, because I think that so oftentimes that people come up with the same shit they came up with before.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Or they get nothing. Like,
yes.
Because they have their own bias.
Yes.
Right? This is just good stuff, man. Everybody should.
Yes. If it's hard to hearken to your customer vantage point, then I think that there's an empathy breach. I think that you actually really need to get out and actually talk to your customer. So if you can't do this and kind of use your imagination to write that paragraph from your customer's point of view, then you need to strengthen your imagination when it comes to who your customer is, because ultimately this person is the reason that your business exists. So honor them by really understanding them at not just at a warm, fuzzy emotional level, but at a functional level too. What are the gaps in their lives, and what's it like to be them? So if you can't do that immediately, then I would contend that you need to start making a practice of actually talking to customers.
Yeah, I think that's a brave choice for many people, to actually go and physically ask people, what do you really want? What is this really about for you? In relationship stuff that we teach corporately, one of the things we say is, you're never fighting about what you're fighting about. So when person A is fighting with person B and it appears to be about this, it's not about that, it's about something else. And I think it's very much the same with purchase, right? You know, people are not buying a Ferrari for a fast car.
Right.
Is it a fast car? Absolutely. But some people are buying it because it's fast, but a lot of people are buying it is because it's a Ferrari. That's the name they like. Other people are buying it because they want to show off to their friend. Other people are buying it because it's a penis extension. I mean, there's a million reasons, but you got to find those out to find out what the psychology of the brand is to your customer, not to you. And that's the difficulty, is the psychology of the brand to me is likely to be different than the psychology of the brand to the other. And until you are brave enough to ask those questions that you're suggesting, I think that's very important. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Please share with our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources you have.
Thank you, Dov. This has been such a pleasure to talk to you. So listeners and viewers, my book is Forging an Ironclad Brand, and it's available on Amazon and all of those sorts of channels, IndieBound, Barnes & Noble. And I have a website. It's called ironcladbrandstrategy.com. And on my website, I have a lot of resources. I have a workbook that's a supplement for the book, Forging an Ironclad Brand. And I also have a list of the qualities of an ironclad brand, so the characteristics that, when present together, make for an ironclad brand. And you can find all of that on ironcladbrandstrategy.com.
ironcladbrandstrategy.com. We'll make sure that we post that on the show notes so that you can have all that. But again, it's ironcladbrandstrategy.com. Lindsay, I want to thank you so much for being with us. It was a pleasure and an honor, and loved it. And thank you so much for really bringing a new level of insight to brand from a very different point of view. And I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dov.
And for you, dear listener, you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to either our Facebook or LinkedIn pages and just look for the group, which is called Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. To find out more about hiring me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or strategist for your organization, simply go to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. The research consistently shows that even the fastest growing companies face the same challenges you do, that they're often struggling with the training and development of their talent, only to have them leave before they get their ROI. If you are sick of and tired of doing all that and not having it stick with you, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about why brand should not live in marketing, but actually it needs to be the lifeblood of who you and your organization is. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.